We have Rich and Paul. It's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Minute.
Right.
Everybody, are you ready, Dion?
Yep, all good.
Okay, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. Bethel Board of Selectmen, regular meeting for Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. And I'm going to share my screen, and if we would please, whoops, it won't let me share. I have a nice image of the American flag, and it's not going to let me share it, I don't think.
Okay, I'll bring the DAR ladies one out.
All right.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go.
All right. So let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance,
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Before we get going on the agenda, I'm going to make a motion to add one item. This is a regular meeting, so we can add to the agenda. I'm going to add I'm going to call it new business item number 9, resolution to approve the loan on the Chestnut water tank. And the reason I'm making this motion is that it was like a previous motion we had. The original motion did not contain certain language such as full faith and credit of the town of Bethel. This was approved by a full referendum. It's just a language adjustment that we need in order to qualify for the Department of Public Health loan. So I'm going to put a motion on the floor that we add that as new business item number 9. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Richie has seconded it. Any discussion? And hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion carries. So that will be at the tail end of our agenda, number 9. Item number 2, consideration of approval of minutes. And I'll start with the special meeting of March 17th, 2020. I'll put that motion on the floor.
I'll make the motion. We accept it.
Okay, all right. Paul made the motion. I'll second. Any discussion? Richie seconded. Any discussion?
No.
And hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. That motion carries. And then finally, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of May 4th, 2020.
I'll make that motion. We accept it.
All right. Paul made the motion. Rich seconded. Any discussion or corrections?
No.
None. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, that carries. Item number 3, first Selectmen's report. I'm just going to recap a couple of things. We have had a fairly successful reopening of several businesses in town. Retail was able to open up on May 20th. Restaurants, all but a few restaurants are up and running for outdoor dining, and now we're just praying for very good weather so that they can get some cash flow in and we can preserve our good restaurants in our downtown area. Most retail reopened last week. Many of the hair salons and barbershops were allowed to reopen yesterday. You can tell I haven't taken advantage of that yet, though, but so I don't know how many of them have actually opened, but I want to give a shout out to Janice Christianic, Beth Cavagna, Tom Galliford, and Laura Vasile, because even though the governor has relaxed many of the restrictions and set aside, certain requirements and set aside deadline dates, everything still has to be inspected. Many of the restaurants have put up temporary shelters, like, awnings and whatever. Those have to be inspected. Everything has to be measured. It has to be pass fire inspection and safety inspections. And those 4 individuals I just mentioned have really been working overtime through the weekend to just absolutely busting their rear ends to try to get everybody approved and opened as fast as they possibly can. They have run into a couple of problems, and Laura is working with the state of Connecticut to try to get some of those things approved as quickly as possible. So I want to just give them let them know that we appreciate the hard work that they're doing on behalf of our local retailers and business community to try to get them up and running and recover some of what they've lost in the past 2 months. With regard to town hall, we did go back to some degree of normalcy starting yesterday, June 1st. We are working regular hours, so town hall is open and the published hours every week. The only difference is that, and this apparently was a part of the message that many people didn't get. We are asking people to make appointments before they come in. And this is really just to prevent people from bunching up and not being able to distance themselves properly in the hallways, because some of those offices are not very big, even in the counter areas where they transact business. So I did repost that today, and I put that in the online in the news bites with the News Times, just to try to remind people they're welcome to come in. We do prefer if they can use the online services or use the new drop box that's out in front. That's great. But if they need to come in to review plans, file land records, anything like that, just to make an appointment before they come in. We have an interactive set up at the main entrance. The person greeting them will have all the appointments on a master computer on a shared file. They will be given a guest pass that allows them to go to the offices. They can make if they need to see several offices, they can make appointments and do whatever they need. And then we ask that they return the guest pass when they leave, so that we know who's in the building, just in case the health department needs it for contact tracing, anything like that. And then we're preparing for phase 2. The governor has announced that effective June 20th, there will be further relaxation of the restrictions. Right now, the limitation on gatherings was raised from 5 to 10, effective yesterday. We expect that to go up to maybe as high as 50 at the end of the month before July 1st, but that's going to be dependent on how people have been responding to the social distancing and the flattening of the curve. Last I checked with the governor's office and looked at the website, that is going extremely well. The rate of new hospitalizations continues to drop very quickly. So although there are new cases, but the new cases, the rate of new cases coming online continues to get to a smaller number. So if that trend continues, then we should see some more opportunities for people to get together this summer. Still looking for people to wear a mask when they're in town hall and in public. Those parts of the governor's orders are still in effect. And I think I'll stop there and ask my colleagues, Rich and Paul, if you have any other comments or questions before we move on.
No.
Okay.
I don't have any.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work to all the people who are working hard on this project.
I'll pass that along, because you know, they really, it's not visible because everybody's been self-isolating, but they've done a great job and they're working very hard. So I thank you for that. Item number 4, public comments. I see we have a few folks who have joined us tonight, and I'll let Dion unmute you one by one. And who'd like to start?
Yeah, if you have a public comment you'd like to make, can you raise your hand? Okay, all right, so we've got Nico here.
Yeah, hi. Good to meet everybody. Hey, Selectmen, Selectmen Straighten. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks, Dion. Kind of my first foray into public political discourse, so I would hope you guys would help me with the protocols and give me any hints you can. But no, my topic, Matt, thank you very much.
Would you mind telling me your first and last name?
Yes, Nico Jordan.
Jordan?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. I wrote a letter to Selectman Knickerbocker last night, an email, and he got back to me very promptly, so thank you. Thank you, Matt, very much. Appreciate it. And I just wanted to bring up the topic of concern recently, which was about the police actions that have been going on kind of across the country, and wanted to our town's attention, I guess. Can I just review? Yeah, I just, you know, I was shocked and deeply disturbed by the police actions in DC that I saw yesterday, and the military police actions. You know, how violent and aggressive ways that kind of they approached the citizenry and escalated an already incredibly intense situation. It seemed like very arrogant, irresponsible, dangerous, and everything seemed like was going wrong, that could have gone wrong on the part of all parties probably, but the police in particular, I thought. And I think we must make sure that no sort of response remotely like that happens here in Bethel or the state of Connecticut or our neighboring towns. Instead, as Matt talked about in his letter with me, he said, focusing on patience, listening, communication, and de-escalation of violence and confrontational situations is really, really important. And so just to go back to my comment to Matt, my specific kind of question was, and the thing that I wanted us to kind of talk about or be aware of is what specific actions are to be taken by the members of the Bethel Police Department and the political leaders of the community to lead the way toward comprehensive, I use the word reform, but I think maybe review would be a better term. Comprehensive review or reform of this municipality's police department with regards to their presence, interactions, and behavior in the community. And then with the vital goal of improving their standing and public perception and trust in the community they are sworn to protect and serve, what steps is the town of Bethel prepared and planning to take to ensure a reformed or well-formed, peaceful, trusting, cooperative relationship between the citizenry, the public, and those that they're sworn to protect and serve them. And just wanted to vibe with what Selectman what Matt said in his email reply to me last night, which was that we're lucky and extremely fortunate to live in a town, and state in America that's relatively low in crime and better trained than most, and fairly responsible in its community policing. From what we've seen across the country, it can go way worse. We're very lucky, and I'm fortunate, and I've had great. I've lived in Connecticut, Bethel for 35 years, and pretty much all of my interactions with any sort of public figures or police have been very positive, I'd say, and not negative. Let's say that, at least, which I don't think they ever should be, especially violent or aggressive or, fearful or anything like that. So we're lucky, but I just wanted to bring it to our points so that we can keep it that way. That's all.
All right. Thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate that.
Thank you all as well.
Thank you. Nico.
Okay. Anybody else for public comment this evening? Oh, okay. Anybody else? All right. Myra, are you trying to unmute?
I have to unmute.
There you go.
Yes, I did. Sorry. Myra Drucker, Nico's mom,
Oh,
among other
dropping the
things.
ball.
But I wanted 24 Wolf Pits Road. I just wanted to reinforce the comment, first of all, that Nico made that obviously we are very fortunate in this community not to have had any incidents, but I think that having assurances that our police are receiving the best possible training in de-escalation techniques and that racial profiling is not going on in this community is really important. So I want to reiterate that. And the other thing I want to do is thank all of you for working so hard through this pandemic and coming up with some great plans for reopening. Even though being old folks, we're probably not going to take advantage of it for quite some time. But thank you.
I hear you. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Any other public comments this evening? Bob Legner, I see you're on. I don't mean to tag you, but did you have any comments to make? We can unmute you if you do.
I don't know why he's not unmuting.
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, if he's having technical difficulties, we can come back to him. But I'll move on with the agenda for now.
Here we go. Okay, I just was
there we
able to
are.
unmute him. Bob, do you have any comments?
I have a comment. Yes, I think our police department does an outstanding job of a positive image to the community here, and every police department isn't that way, and needs to be, and needs to work on being you know, more like our police department is. I served on the police commission many years ago, and we started then with getting with things like the bicycle patrol, making sure that cops walk the beat sometimes downtown, especially when they're new. Get to know people and get to know that a positive aspect of being a policeman. So I commend our people for the way they behave now, and hopefully they have been properly trained. And if there is additional training that needs to be done, it is done. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I see Marty has joined us. Welcome, Marty. I did get your text message a few minutes ago that you were having trouble getting on. So haven't missed anything so far. Any votes anyway?
I ended up calling Nick and he sent me a link. I can't, for some reason, with the link. He sent me a link and I clicked on the link, so. Anyway.
Okay, great. All right, any other public comments? I think we've covered everybody. Hearing none, so we'll move on. And I want to thank you all for that. And I just want to, you know, I explained to Nico in my email to reply this afternoon that this is not really the time for a give and take or a dialogue, but I do want to express my deep appreciation for you going online and making your comments about our police department. And just to let you know, I agree with Mr. Legnard 100%. I've had the pleasure of working with our police department for the last 10 years. We were one of the very first departments in the state of Connecticut to be accredited by CALEA, which is a national accreditation agency. It's voluntary. A minority of police departments in the United States even qualify, but thorough training in de-escalation and safe restraint is part of the accreditation. You can't get this accreditation unless, excuse me, your officers are extremely well trained and practiced at these techniques. As a matter of fact, right now, the captain told me the other day that 3 of our officers are going out of state for special training in these techniques. It's a jiu-jitsu form of restraint that is extremely safe, but it's difficult. It's difficult to learn, but we are putting extra funds into that to make sure that our police are ready for anything that happens and they can perform their jobs with safety for the public as well as for themselves. So I want to thank you for your comments on that. Moving on to number 5, I don't think we have any late correspondence, do we, Dion?
No.
Okay. Moving on to number 6, report on the Bethel Police Station progress. I'd like to welcome Nancy Ryan, the acting chair of the Public Site and Building Committee. Nancy, floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm actually the chair. I got selected to be chair. So.
You mean they finally formally voted you to be chair? Okay.
We did that.
Congratulations.
We did that once we got a full board. I had to wait till all the other members who needed to be replaced were voted in. So then we did that.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you an update on all our projects because we're supposed to do that quarterly, and that's kind of now. But I apologize for not getting a written report together. I can do that if you need. On the school projects, we had our last meeting, regular meeting, May 26th. We have another meeting next week. But on the school projects, we have an interesting situation where now that schools have been canceled for the rest of the year, Rizzo has been given all spaces to work in. They don't have to be restrained, knowing that students aren't coming back to occupy any of the sections of either Johnson or Rockwell. So they're in the process now of creating a new schedule. It seemed like it was an easy thing to do, was just put together a new schedule. However, they've had to put in place a lot themselves, Rizzo, and then each of the subs have had to put in place a lot of COVID-related procedures that they have to follow in order to continue to work. So there have been a few slowdowns with certain subs who have not been able to bring as many workers into the job for a number of different reasons. However, a lot of that is getting resolved. And some of it, we were concerned about the supply chain too, where materials going to be delivered on a regular basis. And a lot of that seems to be resolved too. So we're supposed to get a new schedule next week. giving us a better idea of the focus and what they're going to be doing throughout the rest of the summer as we move towards reoccupying at the end of August. So there's some dates that are being put in place to make sure that any student occupied and any staff occupied spaces are very complete. And if there's anything else that needs to be completed, then things like gymnasium, et cetera, might wait until the student occupied spaces are complete. We had at our last meeting, the bid, FF&E bid package of furniture, fixtures, equipment packages, package B came in. All of them came in under budget, which was great. And we did approve an amount, however, we have to look at it again at our next meeting because there was, on all the spreadsheets, the architects Perkins Eastman and Lauren Cunningham, purchasing agent, are going through all of them to make sure all the numbers jive. It wasn't, so the packages were not one big lump sum. It was little sections of who's providing desks, who's providing chairs, et cetera. So they're making sure all the numbers jive to make sure, but as I said, we were a couple $100,000 under budget, which is a good thing. Couple other things with the schools where Rich, I think, is working with Roy and a few other people to try to figure out what to do with the dirt pile. So that's getting worked on. We have a whole lot of dirt if anybody needs dirt. It's not great dirt, so that's why it's a little difficult to figure out. You know, even if we had a place to stockpile it in town, I'm not sure if it would be usable. And so a lot of work is continuing at the schools, even though, as I said, a couple of subs had some slowdowns with COVID-related issues, like not being able to bring enough people on the job or having some of their workers have to sit out for a little while because there was possible exposure. At least they're all being careful and not sending people to work in a not so good situation. And I understand too that we've put on board some extra cleaning, sanitizing in the project area. So that's good too. On the police station, we did receive 3 reports a couple of weeks ago. One was one we were waiting for, the Hoffman report, back in April when we did the walkthrough, end of April. Hoffman Architects was there to do a complete review. I mean, they spent, a couple of us were there along with somebody from Downs Police Department, et cetera. And after about an hour, we left, and the Hoffman guy stayed for several hours and really spent a lot of time looking very closely at the inside and outside of the building. They issued a report, which was then given to us and to CT Masons, the subcontractors on the job. And CT Masons went out and hired their own group, National Consulting Group, which nobody seems to know who they are. Nobody on the commission ever heard of them. They issued their report, which countered some of the things that the Hoffman report put forth as far as a remedy for fixing the range. And then Hoffman replied basically saying, these are our recommendations. This is what we strongly think needs to be done. And so we discussed it briefly at our last meeting, and we're kind of feeling a little stuck because we're not, Downs Construction has basically said the Hoffman report stands. The information that's in that Hoffman report is what needs to be done to remedy the situation. And if we being the representative of the town's Public Site and Building Commission are in a situation where we also feel like all that work needs to be done as specified in the Hoffman report, and CT Masons doesn't agree, we're not sure. I have instructed Downs not to start work until they hear from us, the town, in making sure that we all agree on what work needs to be done. So we're kind of a little stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Let me ask a question about that.
Sure.
So we have 3 reports now. So we have the original Hoffman report, the CT Mason reply to that report, and then Hoffman's reply to CT Mason, correct?
That's right. And
okay.
I think I forwarded them to you, and I don't know if you
Yes.
distributed them to everybody else. And if you didn't, then Rich and Paul should get them too.
Who is Hoffman? I'm not acquainted.
Okay, so once we found that the firing range was leaking, and Downs came in and did some investigating on their own and did a little. One of the things they did was stood there with a garden hose and just not hard pressure, but just a garden hose, and water started leaking into the firing range. And it was shown then that it wasn't coming from the roof, and it wasn't, Downs went out and hired this Hoffman Architectural Group. They're an architectural group that's also known, very well known in the state to do forensic architecture. They issue reports like this all the time. They came in and did a whole bunch of testing and issued a report, which I believe I sent to all of you last year. And their determination was that yes, leaking was occurring, that it wasn't coming from the roof, that it was coming in through the sides, through the block, either the block or the mortar or both. So they issued a report as to what the remedies would need to be. And then we had a meeting with Downs back in December with Public Site, Police Commission, Police Department. Downs was there, Marty was there, and Downs laid out what their proposal was as far as fixing. So the step number one was to have Hoffman come and do a complete walkthrough with CT Masons of the firing range. And what Hoffman actually did during this walkthrough was with a lumber crayon, they marked areas all like around the whole entire building, the three sides of the building, that they thought needed to be fixed. And the interesting thing was that CT Masons didn't stick around for it. The Hoffman guy stayed, CT Mason guy left, and the other Mason went, they're working over at the school, so I think he went back over there to work. So that's who they are, and they, like, as I said, were hired by Downs to do this investigation and make recommendations as to what they thought the fix needed to be.
Is it the entire range itself, all walls, or just a certain wall?
They marked up all three walls, and some are more, I mean, you can see, especially from the inside, some are worse than others. So the two long walls are worse than the short wall where they put in the block that's going to get removed once they put in the interior section. They needed to be able to have forklift access to add in all the parts of the interior section of the range, and then that would be blocked up to match all the existing.
So essentially, we don't have a solution yet.
We have a solution because it's what Hoffman specified. However, CT Masons is disputing some of that. They're saying one of their, and again, I'm going to have to, as I read through the reports and kind of match them side to side, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask for some help from some other folks too, so I'm not just doing it by myself, from other commission members. As we look at this, is Hoffman completely, they're not completely disputing what, or CT Masons is not completely disputing what Hoffman said. One of the recommendations was to take a 4-foot section and start with that, do the remedy, do a water test, and see if it worked. And I'm not quite sure what that's going to prove or not prove. And what if they choose a section that didn't leak to begin with? So it kind of leaves us a little frustrated, no, a lot frustrated with
Marty?
the next process.
Marty?
One of the public site people wants to get on the roof and look at in the report, which again, Matt, I'm not sure, like I said, if you forwarded it to Rich and Paul, and if not, we should do that.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Because you want to be able to read it too if you want to. One of the things showed the roofing, the detail where the roof meets the sidewalls and the flashing and the roofing there. And there's some back and forth about that. So a couple of public site people wanted to get on the roof and check it out and take a look at it to see, was it done properly? Because the roofers have said specifically that they've gone back and looked at it and everything's fine and it's not the roof. So we want to make sure that what's shown in the plans agrees with what's been done, and it agrees with what they're showing in the report saying what should be done.
Let me ask a couple quick questions, because I think we're going to wind up speaking with the town attorney about this in the very near future. So we have a report from Hoffman, which is a third-party engineering firm.
Mhm.
We have a report from CT Masons, which, just correct me if I'm wrong, CT Masons agrees with some of the recommendations from Hoffman, but not all of them. Is that correct?
So the report is actually from a group called National Consulting Group.
Yeah, and they were hired by CT Masons, correct?
Okay, so the interesting thing is there's not anything specifically in that report from CT Mason saying we agree with this, and so what do CT Masons obviously in a way is disputing the Hoffman recommendations by hiring someone else to say we don't need to do all that. So that, the original Hoffman report was dated May 8, and then this National Consulting Group, May 13, and then the reply from Hoffman, May 21.
Well, my question is CT Masons refusing to do the work as recommended by Hoffman if they don't agree with?
I'm not getting that from the report. The report is basically saying, here's some things we agree with. They're pointing out things like hairline cracks. Well, hairline cracks are normal. Well, are they normal? Are they leaking?
Okay.
So CT Masons hasn't said, this report is written by this group. And again, I don't see any place in it where CT Mason says, yes, they hired the guys, but yes, we agree with this and we're not going to do any work unless we do this little bit rather than the larger amount.
It appears that we're going to always have a problem here. Marty, I'm of the opinion that, this has gone on too long. I think we need to take this to higher authority.
Yeah, it has gone on a long time. I read the reports that Nancy is talking about, and the one thing that I got from the last Hoffman report and the one from CT Mason, the national organization, is that they both seem to agree that everybody's talking about putting a repellent on there, but they both seem to agree that they have no idea how long that repellent's going to last.
Exactly.
It's 1 year, 10 years, 5 years, nobody knows. So it's not a permanent solution.
Yeah.
The other thing that they both agreed to, it was brought out first by National, and then I think Hoffman in their follow-up report indicated that the block was never meant to be waterproof. It was supposed to be water resistant. So, and I think the reason why National wanted to do what I got out of it, the 4x4 section, was the idea was don't spend all your time and money doing all this if it doesn't work. Let's pick out a section and then we'll see what happens at that time.
Right.
It was Nancy is they wanted to know where exactly where Downs did the water tests. Was that ever provided to them?
I don't believe so, because I think it was kind of like I think it was Ryan Patrick from the project manager from Downs showed up with the garden hose and sprayed it in a couple of areas. So I don't believe that it was ever said, oh, wait, I stood 3 feet down and 4 feet up. And
yeah, I don't think it was very specific. Yeah.
And I don't know if any of us were there at the time. I wasn't. I don't think Rich was. I don't think they told us when they were going to do it. And I'm not sure if the only other person or two people that might have been there would have been Captain Pugner or Lieutenant Libertini. Because they're the ones that have been like paying the most attention to this kind of as our liaison, making sure that things are getting done. So that could be something I could ask Downs if they ever did provide that to Hoffman or to CT Masons. Because I did email Jeff Anderson from Downs to say that we're reviewing the reports along with town officials and the police department. I asked that they not start any work until a specific plan has been approved by us, the town. And the 3 reports don't concur. And he replied, basically, And I was wondering what their comment was, Downs, and what they had also sent the reports to Brian Hughes for his review and comment. Haven't heard anything from him. And basically, Jeff Anderson from Downs is saying that they concur with the first report and that that's the work that needs to be done.
Well, I think one of the reasons why they want it, here's my opinion. If they know exactly where the water test was done, you might be able to eliminate a lot of their speculation that it's coming from the roof. That's
Okay,
what I'm
right.
saying. You know, as a matter of fact, wasn't there a problem with some of the flashing at one time?
So I don't know if it was the roof. I don't remember if it was the roof flashing, but I know. So where you go into the firing range, there's that sort of portico that sits there, and that flashing was a problem as water was actually leaking down the front of the building, but then getting in behind the flashing of that roof over that entry door and getting inside, especially during a couple of really heavy rains when there's a huge puddle in there. I remember Captain Pugner sending not just pictures, but videos of water just cascading into that entryway before you actually get into the range part. And the roofers came out and did some work, and it doesn't leak there anymore.
When do you expect to hear from Brian Humes, the architect?
I don't know. I would have to ask him specifically, I think, because he hasn't. It's been a couple weeks since we got the report, and I haven't heard anything specific from him. When Hoffman issued their very first report it was September, when they did their first investigation, and that was forwarded to Brian. He replied pretty quickly and concurred with a lot of what was said in that report, that yes, there's an issue and things need to be fixed. So I haven't heard anything from him. I can check in with him. I thought since he had a quick reply to the last report that he would reply quickly to these.
It wouldn't
Rich?
surprise me if we don't hear from him because of the fact that he hasn't been paid the last couple of thousand.
Right.
Rich?
Yeah, in discussion with Downs and Hoffman, we pretty much demanded that after this bill, after it was repointed, that they would do another water test on the building to see if it continued to leak.
Right.
They're hanging their hat on this waterproofing to help seal up any little cracks or anything. But how long the waterproofing lasts is really unknown. The south side of the building, it might go quicker than the north side, or vice versa, depending on the weather and how the sun hits the building. So there's no guarantee that the building would be dry after they do the repointing, and they would even have to water test it after they put the water repellent on the blocks again to make sure there's no further leakage.
Well, I think they talked about, I was trying to find an email that I ran across from Brian Humes about talking about the repellent versus this additive that was supposed to be put in the mortar, and then also the additive that was supposed to be put into the block while the block was being made to make it waterproof, water resistant. I don't know which one.
It all comes down to we've got a defective product, no matter what's being said. And I agree with Richie. Waterproofing, it's just like a roof. It's got a temporary life. No roof is ad infinitum. I'm at the point, and it's just me, my opinion. I think this has got to go to a higher court. Marty, I think this falls into your bailiwick. We paid too much money, and we've allowed this architect, we've allowed Downs to just sort of walk us down the primrose path here on this whole thing. And it's time just to come to a conclusion.
Well, yes, and one of the things that we don't have specifically as the town, so Downs hired Hoffman to do this review, and they made recommendations. And then CT Mason's hired National Consulting Group, Inc. And so that's their kind of, so who's our person who, legally,
Exactly.
right,
We don't have one.
legally we have Marty, but for someone who has a construction, architecture, design sort of background and can tell whether, okay, I'm looking at this report, I'm looking at the plans, I'm looking at what I see in the building, is this sort of an actionable item that we can do something with?
Nancy, you said the thing that triggered my thinking here was that the specifications for the block should have been waterproof. The specifications for the mortar should have been waterproof. And, I don't think we have that. And if that's the case, I'm sorry, it's a defective product. This falls back onto the architect and the construction firm.
Well, right. And so the block was tested. The block was tested to see if that waterproofing stuff was put in it, and supposedly it was. And then the mortar was tested to see if the waterproofing stuff was in it, and supposedly it was. Yet when it rains, water comes in. So
they may have tested it, but you know what? The actual product wasn't produced that way.
Yeah.
well, it was supposed to be produced that way, but if it leaks,
Right,
that says it isn't, right?
right.
Yeah, Rich, go ahead. Oh, you're muted, Rich.
Yeah.
There we go.
Also, the mortar could be the moisture resistant in the water in the block, but it could be the poor workmanship in laying up the blocks where it's leaking through too. It might not necessarily be the block that's leaking through. That's a question. Maybe they should take a few pieces of the block and see if the water penetrates the block, those spare blocks that they have in the building.
Well, I think, let me make a couple of comments. First of all, Nancy, thank you very much for your report. I think we do need to have a written report on this
Okay.
from your committee. And I would ask you to call the architect and give him a deadline by which you would like a response. I know we have a dispute about some payments, but that's too bad. This is still his project, and he's still on retainer to give us a product that we can work until we figure out what went wrong on this. And I think we need to set a special meeting date, to Paul's point, to make some decisions about what to do next.
Exactly.
And I do agree that we need to consider bringing in some other advisors on this at this point, and take some very serious steps, because this
I
is not
agree.
going
I
in the
agree with you,
direction-
Matt.
Yep.
Nancy, just one other thing to Nancy here.
Sure.
Just out of curiosity, I'm not going to hold you to the numbers, but Johnson School, Rockwell, how are we doing against budget? I know we had a problem initially, I think, with Johnson being over budget.
Actually, it was Rockwell over
Okay, sorry.
and Johnson under.
Okay,
And budget tracking is good right now. I mean, still with those totals of Rockwell over, Johnson under, but not changing significantly up or down.
yeah. There's been no major change orders, has there?
There've
There's been
been
a few.
there've been several change order packages that we've dealt with, and a lot of them have had to deal with environmental abatement. So we had put we have our owner's contingency, but we put an extra contingency for environmental issues in both.
Okay.
And at this point, Rockwell's environmental contingency has been used up. So anything additional at Rockwell with abatement, and Rockwell has a lot more abatement than Johnson.
Yeah, well, it's an older school, yeah.
Older
Right.
school, PCBs, asbestos, et cetera.
All right.
So
But you're reasonably happy the way this project is going?
so budget-wise, we're doing really well. And we hope to continue to go along like that. There are some things that have come up that we're still discussing back and forth as to how those will be dealt with. And as I said, some of the change orders obviously were environmental. Others were just things that come up in a construction project where the architect specifies, choose one of these three, anything, elevators. They choose the elevator that requires an extra plug to be in the elevator shaft. So we had to approve that change order, and I can't remember the amount, but it's not a huge amount.
Yeah.
So there are things like that that come up as they would in any construction project. And some of the change orders were things that we chose as a commission to be at alternates when the budget was doing quite well, things that were necessary. So we're keeping tabs on all that. And I gotta say, having an owner's rep is a big, huge help. They've been tracking a lot of things and keeping us posted on, what's up, what's down, what's going on. So that's been a real help.
Okay. And schedule wise, does it still appear to be in the fall occupancy?
So that's what we're shooting for. As I said in the beginning, we thought once the schools were closed for the rest of the year that they would just jump right in and be able to move right along. But they did have some, as I said, COVID-related slowdowns where
The subcontractors, right?
Where the contractors couldn't bring in the same crews. And sometimes they have to also look at, if you have a big open space and 5 people are working in different places in the big open space that works,
Right.
they have to work really close together. They have to be more specific as to how many people are in there. So
Yeah.
it takes a little bit more coordination. However, they are working to come up with a new schedule for us for our next meeting. And basically, because the Board of Ed is staying on top of it too, looking forward to school opening in the fall in September, being able to occupy at the end of August so that furniture can be put in place so that teachers can unpack, so they can set up their classrooms, et cetera. And most likely looking at getting temporary COs again, since there might be little areas of the building, large areas like the gym that may not be totally complete, and those can be finished once school's in session.
Yeah. Well, we have sort of a new gym there.
The gym at Johnson was an addition.
Yeah.
The
Are we
gym at
testing the
Rockwell,
block?
Yeah.
I hate asking this question. Are we testing the blocks for waterproof?
I don't know if it was block construction. I think it,
But it might be just after this fiasco in the police station.
yeah. We could
All right.
check into that.
Okay, I think that we need to, we'll have Dion poll you guys. I think we need to schedule another meeting, a special meeting within the next week, possibly even a joint meeting with the Public Site and Building Committee, and make some decisions about how to proceed on this.
I'm unavailable between the 9th and the 11th.
Okay, we'll work around that.
Okay.
Make sure you're there, because you've got a lot of expertise in this area. You've been on a lot of building committees and a lot of projects, and we want to make sure that both you and Rich are available for that, but we'll be in touch on that.
Okay.
Right. So our public site meeting is next Tuesday, June 9th.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to do it after that.
Well, I'll get back to you. We'll see when we can get together. I don't want to wait on this. I'm going to get this ball rolling, because we're still operating on a temporary CO, correct?
So I believe the COs on the building, so there's 2 permits, I believe, one for the main building, one for the range. And
Yeah.
the main building is, I've been in contact with Chris Baldwin and with Downs, asking them specifically to get the ball moving on the CO. And I know there's been email communication between Ryan Patrick and Chris Baldwin. And because Chris had a very long list from not this past, but the October before occupancy.
But they're still on a temporary CO, correct?
They are still, the main building is still on temporary CO, and that's
Okay,
what we know that that whole list has been completed, flagpole lights being one of the big ones. So they should not have a problem getting the CO. It's just basically Chris going through his list, making sure all the items that he had on his list were completed, and doing some walkthrough.
Well, we're not going to get a CO on the range until it doesn't leak, and that's got to get done. It's time to pull the trigger on some things and make this happen. So
Right.
we will be in touch on that.
Matt, just
Yeah.
real quick. Rich, are you available on Monday, June 8th?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't have anything on your calendar, so we'll try maybe to work with that.
Yeah, why don't we tentatively set that up for Monday, June 8th? Paul, you're
Okay.
available then, right?
I'm okay with that, yeah.
Okay, all right,
And that's going to be a Board of Selectmen meeting, not public site.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Any other final questions for Nancy before we move on? All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Nancy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Thanks
Nancy.
for being on tonight. I'm going to move on to item number 7. Consideration of tax refunds. I'll put a motion on the floor, and we had this in the packet. Recommendation from the tax collector, Mrs. Skako, that we authorize refunds in the amount of $1,477.69. These are 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 refunds, all of which, all except one are from terminated auto leases. And then there's one on in addition to that, but they're all for overpayment of taxes. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? And hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That carries. Item number 8, consideration of appointment to the Housatonic Resource Recovery Authority. This is just more of a housekeeping thing. For some reason, the HRRA authority is not on the same schedule as we are, so we have to reappoint ourselves. So I'll put a motion on the floor that in accordance with state law and our town charter, in the charter of the Housatonic Resource Recovery Authority, that the first selectman, Matt Knickerbocker, is the primary representative to HRRA and Rich Straighten is the secondary. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. I didn't see you jump up and volunteer either. All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and last night, that motion carries. Last item, and Marty, you were not on when we did this, I added an item to the agenda. This is from Tom Villa from the Utilities Department. This is just like that one we did last month or the month before where we had to restate the resolution because it was missing one sentence that's required by Department of Public Health. Did you see a copy of that?
You're muted, Marty.
You're muted, Marty.
Oh, sorry.
I did it.
There you are.
I know he sent me something, but I didn't have a chance to read it.
It's exactly the same thing as we did before, but DPH wants us to include a sentence that says all such loans shall be general obligations of the town of Bethel backed by its full faith and credit, So I'm going to read this into the record, and there is a hard copy that will be added to the minutes.
What's this format? Which part of the PUC?
This is for the Chestnut Ridge water tank.
Oh, okay.
So Town of Bethel, Connecticut, Chestnut Ridge Water Tank Project Municipal Resolution. Whereas by the townwide machine vote held on March 10th, 2020, in accordance with the Connecticut General Statute 7-7, following a special town meeting of March 2nd, 2020, the Town of Bethel approved a resolution recommendation by the Public Utilities Commission and approved by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance to fund an amount not to exceed $2,239,681 for the construction of a water tank for the project referred to and known as the Chestnut Ridge Water Tank Project. Said funding shall come from bonding, bond anticipatory notes, loans, temporary borrowing, and or other appropriation as recommended by the comptroller to be reduced by any available grants obtained by the Town of Bethel and or the Bethel Public Utilities Commission, if any. All such loans shall be general obligations of the Town of Bethel backed by its full faith and credit. Whereas the Town of Bethel, Connecticut is desirous to make application to the State of Connecticut Department of Public Health or other such state agency for the loans or grants and or grants for funding to achieve the construction of the Chestnut Ridge Water Tank Project. Further, Matthew S. Knickerbocker, First Selectman of the Town of Bethel, Connecticut, or his designee, is authorized to provide such additional information and execute such other documents as may be required by any agency of the State of Connecticut in connection with any loans and or grants submitted by the Town of Bethel, Connecticut for the construction of the Chestnut Ridge Water Tank Project as to any amendments, rescissions, and or revisions to the applications, proposals, and or agreements submitted thereto. Closed resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, been double seconded. So this was exactly what we approved before. We just added the sentence, all such loans shall be general obligations of the Town of Bethel backed by its full faith and credit. And that qualifies us to receive the loan and grant from the Department of Public Health. So any questions on that? Hearing none, I'll try your minds. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. And that concludes our agenda. I thank you very much for your time. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
So moved by Rich, seconded by Paul. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nico. Thank you, Bob Legnard. Thanks for joining us tonight. I hope everyone has a lovely evening.